While your research, it's fascinating. You've got articles on qubits, entanglement, even a quantum internet. You're really going deep here. Clearly, you're not just interested in the what, but the why behind this tech. So let's unpack all of that together.
Yeah, and what I find most fascinating is, well, we're not just talking about a faster internet or even more secure one. Quantum networks, they could change how we think about computing and communication entirely.
That's what's got me hooked, for sure.
Energy.
But before we get too far, let's just make sure we're on the same page. How are these quantum networks different from, the internet we use every day?
Well, think about it this way. The internet, it uses bits, right? They can be a 0 or a 1. But quantum networks use qubits. And these qubits can be in a state we call superposition.
Superposition. Okay, I've seen that word. What exactly does that mean?
Imagine a coin spinning in the air. Until it lands, it's both heads and tails at the same time, right? It's kind of like that with a qubit. It's in multiple states at the same time. So instead of just two options, a qubit has like a whole range of possibilities.
Exactly. And that's where the power of quantum computing comes in. Qubits, they can explore many possibilities at once. So they can tackle problems that would take our regular computers, millions of years. Things like simulating complex molecules to design new drugs or new materials even.
Okay, yeah, I can see why people are excited. But what about this entanglement I keep seeing in your research? It sounds kind of, I don't know, science fiction-y.
It is mind-bending. Entanglement is when two qubits get linked, no matter how far apart they are. Like, you change one, the other changes instantly. Einstein even called it spooky action at a distance.
Spooky action, huh? Okay, that is strange. But how does that even work in a network? Is it really instant, like you said?
Well, instantaneous is where it gets a bit tricky. Think of it like having two gloves, one left, one right. You find a right glove, you instantly know the other's left, even if they're miles apart. Entanglement is similar. The qubits are correlated, so we know about one just by measuring the other.
So it's not that information travels faster than light. It's more like these entangled qubits are, well, fundamentally linked, right?
Exactly. And this linkage, it's what makes entanglement so powerful for security. Imagine someone trying to eavesdrop on qubits that are entangled, being used for communication. Just by looking at them, they'd disrupt the entanglement. Both the sender and receiver would know something's wrong immediately.
So it's like a built-in alarm system for your data. I like that. And now your research mentions this thing called quantum key distribution, QKD. Is that how entanglement is used to make communication, well, more secure?
Exactly. QKD uses entanglement to create these encryption keys that are, well, virtually impossible to intercept, at least not without being detected. It's one of the most promising applications of quantum networks, especially for cybersecurity.
Okay, I'm picturing all these entangled qubits zipping around the globe, but how do we actually build a network out of this?
Well, quantum networks, they're a bit like the internet we have now. We have QLANs, they're local networks, like connect devices in one building. Then we have QMANs, metropolitan networks. Those could span a city even.
And the big goal, the ultimate goal, is a QN, right? A quantum wide area network, basically a quantum internet.
You got it. Imagine quantum computers all over the world linked up, working together to solve complex problems. It's a long way off, but the research is moving fast. China already launched a satellite. It's called MISSIS, dedicated to quantum communication experiments.
Wait, there are beaming entangled photons, like from space? That's amazing, but I'm guessing it's not all easy. What are some of the challenges in building these larger networks?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles is its scalability. How do we build networks with tons of qubits, thousands, maybe millions even, and keep them all, in their delicate quantum states? It's a huge engineering challenge.
From what I've read, qubits are really sensitive to their environment, aren't they? Is that part of the problem?
Oh, absolutely. Even the slightest disturbance can cause errors. That's why researchers are developing super precise systems, like ones using white rabbit technology. Think of them like incredibly accurate clocks, keeping everything in sync to minimize those errors.
It's amazing how they're finding ways to, work with these delicate systems. But even if we solve that, what about security beyond QKD? Is the whole network vulnerable if someone gets past that key exchange?
That's a great question. And it's something they're really working on. QKD is a great start, but we need to secure everything, the hardware, the software, everything. One idea is to use parallel QKD channels, but these ones are dedicated to managing the network itself. Basically, a security system for the security system.
Ah, so a multi-layered approach, using quantum mechanics at every level.
You got it. It's about using those unique properties to create a network that's not only powerful, but incredibly secure.
This is already so much to take in, and I feel like we've only scratched at the surface. In the next part of our deep dive, let's explore some of the more advanced applications. Things like quantum error correction and, what was it, entanglement swapping?
Sounds good. I'm ready when you are. There's a whole world of mind-bending possibilities waiting.
All right, I'm ready to jump back into this quantum world. So we've got the basics down, but now I want to know, what can we actually do with these quantum networks? Your research mentions some pretty amazing applications.
Yeah, the exciting part is we're not just talking about, like, small improvements. Quantum networks, they could revolutionize whole fields, like medicine, material science, even, how we understand the universe.
Okay, now you've got me really intrigued. What are some of these, like, game-changing applications?
Well, one area with huge potential, it's called distributed quantum computing. Imagine a network of quantum computers all over the world, all working together, like a giant brain.
Yep. A network of quantum computers. Okay, yeah, that sounds insanely powerful. What kind of problems could we even tackle with that kind of setup?
Think about drug discovery, designing new medicines. It often involves simulating these super complex molecules that can overwhelm even the most powerful computers we have today, regular computers, that is. But a network of quantum computers, they could potentially crack those simulations wide open, leading to breakthroughs in medicine and beyond, really.
So we're talking about potentially curing diseases or developing completely new materials, maybe even like solving the mysteries of the universe.
Exactly. And that's really just the tip of the iceberg. Let's talk about sensing. Imagine a network of these entangled quantum sensors all spread out across the globe.
Yeah.
We could get an unbelievable level of precision in fields like astronomy and geophysics.
Oh, wow. So like super precise telescopes that can see deeper into space, or sensors that can predict earthquakes or volcanic eruptions even with incredible accuracy.
Exactly. We could detect things like gravitational waves with way more sensitivity, or map the Earth's magnetic field in detail, even monitor climate change with a level of detail we can only dream of right now.
This is all so exciting, but I keep thinking about this idea of unbreakable communication. Is that really possible with quantum networks?
It is. And it's one of the most, transformative applications. Remember how we talked about QKD, how it makes encryption keys virtually unhackable? Well, imagine applying that same principle, but to entire communication systems.
So military communications, government secrets, even financial transactions, all completely secure. Like no one could eavesdrop at all.
You got it. It would totally change cybersecurity as we know it. And it's not just some futuristic fantasy either. Researchers are making serious progress in developing these technologies.
That's good to hear. It seems like every time I read about quantum networks, there's some new breakthrough. But I know there are big challenges too. What are some of the hurdles researchers are facing as they try to actually build these applications?
One of the biggest is still that scalability issue we mentioned before. Building networks with thousands, maybe even millions of qubits, and keeping those quantum states stable. It's a massive task.
Yeah, I can imagine keeping all those qubits entangled and error-free. It's going to be incredibly complex.
Oh, absolutely. Qubits, they're so sensitive to their environment, and any disturbance can cause errors. That's why researchers are developing these really clever techniques for quantum error correction.
Error correction. So is that like a spell checker, but for qubits?
Uh-huh. Well, it's a bit more complicated than that. But the analogy kind of works. Quantum error correction. It's all about encoding information across many qubits. This redundancy, it helps protect the information, even if some of those qubits, experience errors.
So even if one qubit gets messed up, the overall information is still okay.
Exactly. It's like having a built-in backup system for the entire network. And there's some fascinating methods they're exploring, like the shore code and the surface code.
Those names sound like something out of a sci-fi movie. Do they actually work, though?
Oh, they do. The shore code, it's a really clever one. Imagine you're trying to send a message, but on a super noisy phone line. Instead of sending it once, you send multiple copies through different lines. Even if some parts get garbled, you can piece it back together by comparing the copies.
Ah, I get it. So using redundancy to overcome the noise and the errors that can happen in these systems.
Exactly. And the surface code, that one's another promising technique. It takes a bit of a different approach, but the goal is the same. Protect that quantum information no matter what.
This is all starting to sound like a super delicate balancing act. Building these insanely complex networks, but at the same time trying to protect them from the tiniest little disturbances.
It is. And on top of that, we still need to figure out how to manage and route information through these networks. Remember, we're dealing with qubits, and entanglement. They behave completely differently from the bits and bytes of the regular internet.
So are we talking about a whole new set of like rules and protocols for quantum communication?
Exactly. Researchers are developing these specialized protocols designed just for quantum networks. They handle things like routing and error correction, even that delicate entanglement distribution process.
Right. And you mentioned those things before, QTCP and QUDP. Are those examples of these like quantum protocols?
They are. QTCP and QUDP, they're like the quantum versions of the TCP and UDP protocols. The ones that run the internet we use now. They're still in the early stages, but they're crucial for building a quantum internet that actually works.
It's amazing to think that we're basically building a whole new internet from the ground up,
Yeah.
based on quantum mechanics.
It is.
Yeah.
And as we go deeper into this world, we find even more, well, mind-boggling concepts and possibilities. In the last part of our deep dive, we'll explore some of the truly cutting-edge research, stuff that's pushing the limits of what we thought was possible with quantum networks.
Okay, I'm ready for the grand finale. Lead the way. All right, so we've gone from the basics, qubits, entanglement, all that, to the potential for a whole quantum internet. Now I'm ready for like the really cutting edge stuff, those ideas that are pushing the limits of what we thought was even possible with these networks.
Uh-huh. All right, get ready for some seriously mind-bending concepts. We'll be talking about topological quantum networks and hybrid quantum classical systems. Oh, and the latest in quantum network security.
Whoa, okay. Let's start with those topological quantum networks. That name sounds like, I don't know, something straight out of a physics textbook.
Oh, it kind of is. These networks, they use a whole different approach to quantum computing. They use these things called anyons. Imagine like particles that only exist in 2 dimensions.
Yeah.
And they behave totally differently from anything we see in the in everyday world.
Okay, I'm picturing these like flat 2D particles zipping around. But how do these anyons actually make a quantum network different?
The amazing thing about anyons is their behavior is inherently resistant to errors. It's like they're self-correcting qubits, which is huge when you're trying to build these delicate quantum systems.
So instead of trying to fix errors all the time, we're using anyons to kind of prevent them in the first place.
Exactly. That's why topological quantum computing is such a hot research area. It could lead to quantum computers and networks that are much more robust and reliable.
That makes a lot of sense. But even with these advancements, I mean, we're not going to just switch to a purely quantum world overnight, right? What about all our existing computers and networks?
Yeah, you're right. A complete switch isn't really realistic. That's why researchers are looking into what they call hybrid quantum classical networks. These systems kind of combine the best of both worlds. So using our classical networks for things like data storage, regular processing, and then using quantum networks for the really specialized tasks like secure communication or those complex computations.
Ah, I see. So it's not about replacing everything, but more like integrating these new quantum technologies into what we already have.
Exactly. It's about creating a bridge between the two worlds, getting the best of both.
Okay, that's a relief. I was worried we'd all have to throw out our laptops and phones. But speaking of security, you mentioned some breakthroughs happening in that area. What's going on there?
Well, remember how we talked about QKD for secure key exchange? Researchers are now going beyond that. They're trying to secure the entire network at a much deeper level.
Okay, so what kind of security measures are we talking about? Give me the details.
Imagine a security system that uses quantum mechanics itself to detect any intrusion attempts. They call them quantum intrusion detection systems. They'd monitor those quantum channels, looking for anything unusual that could signal an attack.
So instead of reacting to a breach after it happens, we're using quantum mechanics to, proactively identify threats.
Precisely. These systems could even analyze the quantum states themselves to see if there's been any tampering. They'd be incredibly difficult to bypass.
That sounds pretty powerful. It's like having a security guard who can, I don't know, see into the very structure of the network itself. Are there any other security things in development?
Oh, there are. Researchers are also working on something called quantum honeypots. Basically, they're like traps for hackers. They're designed to look like vulnerable parts of the network.
So if a hacker tries to attack this honeypot, they're actually revealing their methods to the security researchers.
Exactly. By studying these attacks, researchers can learn how hackers might try to exploit quantum networks and then develop countermeasures to stay ahead of them. It's a constant arms race,
It's wild to think that we're using these same principles that govern the tiniest particles in the universe to build these complex and powerful networks. It's just amazing.
It really shows you what we can do. you know. And the exciting part is we're really just getting started. There's so much more to discover about quantum mechanics and how we can use it.
Well, this deep dive has definitely opened my eyes to a whole new world. It's been quite a journey, from the basics of qubits all the way to, like, topological quantum networks and quantum security.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you. And to everyone listening, remember, this is just the beginning. If you're interested in this stuff, keep learning, keep asking questions. Who knows, maybe you'll be the one to make the next big breakthrough in the quantum world.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.